August 27th, 1883. The Sunda Street in Indonesia. Imagine this. Midday suddenly turns pitch black as the sun is entirely blocked out by this massive, choking layer of ash. A towering tsunami rises up from the sea, sweeping toward the coast with enough sheer force to just wipe out entire settlements in an instant. The sound of the explosion is so unbelievably deafening that it echoes for thousands of kilometers. At least 100,000 lives are lost. Now, a lot of people at the time thought this was just some horrific freak of nature, but this apocalyptic event, the eruption of Krakatoa, was absolutely no coincidence. It was a violent reminder of the raw, immense power hidden right beneath our seemingly calm blue planet.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into the Ring of Fire, Earth's restless engine. We're going to unpack the hidden geological system that makes catastrophic events like Krakatoa a recurring reality. We build our cities, we draw our borders, and we create entire civilizations on land that feels perfectly solid. But right beneath our feet, without us even noticing, the Earth is slowly, powerfully shifting. Part 1. Krakatoa and the Ring of Fire. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. We need to step back from the isolated tragedy of Krakatoa and look at the macro scale of what we're actually dealing with today. Because Krakatoa wasn't just acting on its own, it was sitting on top of a much deeper, vastly more volatile system. When you hear Ring of Fire, you might instantly think of, Tolkien's fantasy world. But this is very, very real. We're talking about a massive 40,000-kilometer horseshoe-shaped belt. It stretches all the way from Chile in South America, up the western coast of North America, across the Bering Strait to Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, and then down through Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, all the way to New Zealand. Now, what's really wild about this data is the sheer concentration of danger. Look at this. 90% of all global earthquakes happen right here within this exact belt. And on top of that, 75% of the world's active and dormant volcanoes are located in this exact same zone. Mount Fuji, Mount St. Helens, Krakatoa, different countries, different names, sure. But beneath the surface, they are all powered by the exact same geological engine. Part 2. Earth's restless inner engine. So what is actually powering this massive 40,000-kilometer ring? Well, let's get into the hard geology of our planet for a second. There are basically two main sources of Earth's internal heat. First, you have the remnant heat left over from the planet's very formation. And second, radioactive decay. Together, these two elements keep the Earth's core boiling at a blistering 5,000 to 6,000 degrees Celsius. Now, simple physics tells us that this massive, intense heat cannot just stay safely trapped down there forever. It is constantly pushing energy upwards toward the mantle. Let's walk through this engine step by step, because it's kind of like a giant boiling pot. Heat rises from the core, pushing hot mantle material up toward the crust. As it gets closer to the surface, it cools down, and then that cooled material sinks right back down. This creates these slow, continuous, but incredibly powerful convection currents. You see, the Earth's crust isn't just one solid, unbroken shell. It's completely fractured into these massive, floating tectonic plates. And those convection currents below, they're what slowly shift those plates around, making them pull apart, grind together, or even collide head-on. So, the absolutely crucial point here is what happens when these plates interact, particularly in what's known as a subduction zone. This is a violently active region where a heavy, dense oceanic plate is forced directly beneath a lighter continental plate. As it gets pushed down, it generates extreme heat, melting rock into magma and building up immense, unimaginable pressure over centuries. When these plates finally give, all that pressure has to escape, and it escapes via earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or massive seafloor fissures that trigger tsunamis. Part 3. The history of terrible destruction. To truly grasp what this geological belt is capable of, we have to look at the scars it's left behind. And let's be clear, these disasters are not isolated historical anomalies. They are part of a relentless, ongoing process. The Ring of Fire is literally always moving, always building pressure, and always finding a new release valve. We see it everywhere, from the Chile megaquake in 1960 to the heartbreaking Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004, the Japan Tohoku earthquake in 2011, right up to the eruption of Mount Merapi in Indonesia just last year. Let's look at how this pressure builds up to terrifying peaks, starting with 1960 in Chile, a 9.5 magnitude earthquake. To put that into perspective, that is the highest magnitude ever recorded on the Richter scale. The sheer, terrifying violence of this event collapsed entire suburbs into absolute ruin. But the nightmare didn't stop at the coastline. It sent tsunamis racing all the way across the Pacific Ocean, striking shorelines in Japan and America simultaneously. No way to hide from it.
And then, of course, we have the cascading horrors of the 2011 Japan Tohoku disaster, a 9.0 magnitude quake that triggered terrifying tsunami waves reaching up to 40 meters high. This disaster went so far beyond just shattered buildings, it triggered the Fukushima nuclear meltdown. We're talking about over 20,000 tragic deaths and $235 billion in damages. This perfectly, horrifyingly illustrates exactly what happens when a subduction zone suddenly releases its built-up pressure.
Part 4. Global Economy and the Butterfly Effect. Let's pivot for a second from the physical destruction to the modern reality we live in, where a local tragedy can instantly become a full-scale global crisis. Hundreds of millions of people live in nations sitting right on the Ring of Fire. And these nations, they also happen to be the engine of the modern world. Taiwan is the heart of global semiconductors. Japan completely dominates auto and electronics. South Korea provides our chips and batteries. Chile is a massive exporter of copper. And Indonesia provides nickel and vital natural resources. A major disaster in just one of these highly specialized nations instantly paralyzes the modern global economy. We live in a deeply interconnected world, which honestly makes us incredibly vulnerable to cascading failures. Think about it. If an earthquake severs submarine internet cables on the ocean floor, global banking, communication, and data flow can literally grind to a halt. A broken chip factory in Asia can instantly freeze global supply chains and shut down a car manufacturing line on the exact opposite side of the planet. It's the ultimate butterfly effect. And that's before we even mention the terrifying risks to coastal power plants, oil refineries, and chemical facilities scattered right across these fault lines. And even if our digital and physical supply chains somehow manage to survive the shaking ground, we still have to consider the sky. Back in 1991, the eruption of Mount Pinatubo injected so much ash and sulfur into the atmosphere that it actually temporarily lowered global temperatures. It blocked sunlight, it disrupted agricultural cycles, and totally altered the climate balance. If multiple large volcanoes in the Ring of Fire were to wake up around the same time, the impact on global food supplies and climate stability would just be absolutely devastating.
Part 5. Humanity's Temporary Home.
All of this data, all of this history, it brings us to a rather profound, sobering reality about our place on this planet. We humans, we really like to think we're in control, right? We build our incredible megacities, we lay down these massive digital networks across oceans, and we fiercely debate our borders. But Earth doesn't obey human maps. It has its own time, its own pressure, and its own language. The shrinking of our globalized world hasn't necessarily made us safer. Actually, it's simply tied our collective fates more tightly to this unforgiving geology.
The Ring of Fire is essentially an ongoing, roaring warning sign. It reminds us that our planet is alive, active, and fully in control of the grand narrative. We aren't the owners of the Earth. We are merely temporary passengers, standing on its restless surface, completely reliant on its temporary stability. Which leaves us with one final thought. Earthquake experts and geologists know that the pressure is building right now. The question isn't if the Ring of Fire will wake up again. The geology guarantees that it will. The real question is, when it does, will we be prepared? Thank you for joining me for this explainer.